We've landed on most valuable players, and there's some pretty good candidates that we just saw in that little piece of video. Yeah. Dan, let's start in the American League. Give me an MVP pick.
For me, it's Bobby Witt Jr. You know, Tom, when I look at the evolution of him as a player and I think of MVP, a couple things jump out. One is you got to be durable. He started 161 games a year ago. Number two is that you got to bring energy to the ballpark. He does that every day. His evolution as a hitter for me over the last 3 years goes directly to this board. His contact rate's gone up. His exit velocity rate's gone up. His walks have come up. His strikeouts come down. So when you do that and you combine that with what we're going to see in this video, you get an elite player. So, Tom, tell me what you see when you see him, because what I see is just an explosive offensive player.
I love that chart you showed, the improvement, because that pitch to me, his biggest improvement, because pitchers used to get him out on fastballs up. He made the adjustment with his posture in the box and got on top of that. And now you're seeing, Dan, this is a guy who could leave any part of the baseball field.
Yeah, I mean, again, and he hits all kind of pitching. I think it's even going to be better this year with Jonathan India hitting in front of him. But I will say, Vinny Pasquantino needs to stay healthy behind him, because I would not pitch this young man if I had an opportunity to pitch around him. So now we're going to get into the other two parts of his game. You want to see his greatest growth? Look at his defensive growth over the last 2 years. Won a Gold Glove last year. And it's not just that he can make spectacular plays, Tom. He now makes the routine plays exceptionally well, as, again, we'll see in the video. Look at the physicality here, by the way. Routine play. Sets his feet, doesn't overthrow the ball. And, oh, by the way, best arm strength in the game at this position. Wow. Flat-footed, falling back, throws a seed to first base. Athleticism for the position. Look at the closing speed on that play. So really, Tom, just a fantastic player defensively, and again brings the energy to his defensive part of the game that's infectious with the players around him.
Yeah, and you mentioned the speed on the bases as well. I mean, this guy does everything that reminds me of a prime Mike Trout. I say that because I see his athleticism on the field, and I'm saying, who else on a baseball field on a nightly basis do you see this package of skills? That's when I saw Mike Trout making plays in the outfield, hitting 450-foot bombs and stealing bags. I'm now seeing Bobby Witt do those kind of things. And as Dan said, he plays every darn day. So I'm with you. It's hard to pick against a guy who last year had an unbelievable year and I think just keeps getting better.
You know, Matty, one of the criteria I have for an MVP, does he make the players around him better? So is he a great player, but does he raise the level of play of everybody else around him? At 23 years old, this young man actually did that for his team last year, and there's no doubt he'll do it again this year.
I don't know that we've done a prediction show in the last 5 years where somebody hasn't said, at least one person, Aaron Judge. You guys both have Bobby Witt. He is one of the shorter shots on the board. In fact, right there with Aaron Judge as a betting favorite at plus money. You got to go to plus 800 to find Gunnar Henderson, Corey Seager, Vlad Guerrero Jr., the favorites in the AL MVP race. Let's talk about the National League. We have to put the disclaimer on it that whenever Shohei Ohtani does both, whenever he pitches and hits, he's always in line to be an MVP candidate. Does he make it a fourth in the last 5 years? Does it hinge on his pitching? Because last year he won an MVP just as a DH. Oh, just as a DH with massive numbers. Give me a National League MVP pick.
Well, it has to be Shohei because I think, Matt, he's going to start, say, 15 times, and he's going to hit 40-plus home runs. That's an MVP. Who else is going to have the kind of numbers he's going to put up? Now, he's not going to steal 50 bases because he is going to pitch. We'll probably see him by the end of May. And I think he's going to be dominant when he's on the mound.
So let's do this exercise then, because I think we'd all agree that he's the guy. If Shohei Ohtani gets locked in his hotel room for 6 months and he's not eligible, who's the National League MVP?
I'm going to go to Juan Soto. And I'll tell you why. It's not just because of the contract. I look at where he's hitting in a great lineup, where he's got a switch hitter, Francisco Lindor, on-base machine in front of him, and a power-hitting right-hander, Pete Alonso, behind him. He's going to have a lot of opportunities to drive in runs. And again, like Bobby Witt Jr., he's in the lineup every day. So he's going to have a ton of opportunities on a really good offensive team. And I think he's the surest thing in baseball when it comes to performance. Even his bad years are great.
Now, I struggle with this one because Tom brought it up earlier in the show. If Elly De La Cruz can cut a strikeout rate 10, 15, even 20%, I think he legitimately puts himself in the conversation of MVP. But I'm going to go Mookie Betts. If Mookie Betts can duplicate his 2023 year where he hit 307 with a 409 on base and 819 slug with 39 home runs as a shortstop, that if he can just play the position as an average shortstop, I think he legitimately puts himself in the position of winning the MVP.
Betts, Soto, Elly, Shohei. I think we'd all agree that Shohei's the chalk, but it'll be fun to see how it plays out.
I'm so impressed by the fact that Paul Skeens has really only been a full-time pitcher for 3 years. I mean, remember, he was a two-way player at Air Force and starting out in college. And he's a guy, as I see him work over these last few years, he has now calibrated his delivery like the engine of a jet fighter. I mean, he's worked so hard at getting into the right slot. I want to show you what he's done over the years because, as I mentioned, at Air Force, he was a catcher and he was a closer. Look at the release point in relation to the cap, the bill of his cap, right? It's a little higher. That's like traditional over the top. He goes to LSU, and all of a sudden now he's a little bit lower, about even with the top of his cap. And last year we saw his Rookie of the Year. Man, he's got this low arm slot, slinging the ball lower than the top of his cap. And that's that low three-quarters action. It gives him so much, I call it an ease of movement. It's like he calls it a natural movement now of his arm. It actually took a lot of work using his body to get there. So let's break down that delivery and what makes him so special, because I think he's built to last, and not just because he's 6'6", 260. Again, going back to Air Force, you see pretty much straight over the top, traditional pitching mechanics. You know, he's probably just a good arm at that point. Here he's developing into a real pitcher. Arm gets a little bit lower. He's got a little more action on the ball, a little more free and easy, if you will. And then last year, this is the guy he reminded me of. Now, Pedro's 5'11". Pedro Martinez on the left. Paul Skeens 6'6" on the right, but very similar arm slot. And I'll show you later what else they have in common with this delivery. Let's talk about the mechanics, because when that front foot lands, that ball better be in the loaded position, 90-degree angle. It is. Front hip is already turned. The torso hasn't yet turned. That yellow dot there is the average release point. So you can see he's lower and more offset than an average release point. Look at these numbers here. Release comparison to the Major League average. He's actually lower and he's more offset. We just showed you that orange dot there. That makes this stuff even more difficult for a hitter to pick up. Now, I mentioned Pedro. I want you to watch after Paul releases the ball, the recoil of his front leg and his front hand. He doesn't stop. He's not slamming on the brakes. Pedro at 5'11" had such free and easy motion. Same thing. Watch the recoil. It's like a rifle. You're having a recoil action because there's so much energy. When I see a guy do that, I see a guy who's got a free and easy delivery. That's last year on the left, this year on the right. He's actually a little bit lower than he was last year. Again, he's still working on his delivery, perfecting it. Here's the changeup. A little bit lower. It's about 2 inches lower than it was last year. This guy, to me, it's hard to say because he was so good last year, Dan, but the best is coming for Paul Skeens. Here's the release points I'm talking about. Last year for Paul, you can see it's clustered there. That blue are the curveballs, which he did not throw this spring, by the way. He's added a cutter. We did not see the curveball in the spring. We'll see how it plays out. Pedro, you see he'd like to vary his arm slot in terms of the height. You know, he put a lot of deception in his delivery as well. Also had the curveball. But Paul Skeens has tightened his release point variance. He's even closer now. Everything is coming out of the same spot. When I say everything, he's like a 6-pitch pitcher now.
Yeah.
I know we love to talk about 100. This guy can carve up hitters in so many different ways. I think the guardrails are off. I think he throws 180 innings this year. I think he wins the Cy Young.